share why they're green today. I don't want to tell anybody, so feel free to unmute.
Sure, I go for it. Hi guys. I'm just stoked to be here, honestly. I'm super excited. I really needed a little bit of push to get my books read and also to be around inspiring folks. And I was like lacking them around me. So even if it's not in an in-person setting, I'm like so privileged and I'm really grateful to be able to be here, and I can wait to get to know you more.
Fantastic. We're really lucky to have you and everybody else here. I see some yellows. Thank you, by the way, for your vulnerability. I know it can be kind of scary to share yellows and stuff. Lottie or Dallas, if you'd like to share, feel free, but also don't feel pressure to. Any idea why you're yellow today?
Sure, I can share. I just had today like a lot, I think, in work. I'm still at work, so it's the last hour, which I'm very excited about as well, to be in the book club. But yeah, just a lot of interviewing, which always like a little bit depletes the energy, even though I like it. So I'm a little bit like end of the day kind of vibes, I guess, but nothing bad.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And Lottie?
I'm just feeling a bit flustered today. I am 3 months into a new job and I do not know, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. I'm sure I'm fine, but I'm being super hard on myself and I need to chill. So it's actually nice to take some time out and yeah, do something else.
Fantastic. I'm glad we can be like a little bit of escape for you. And I definitely, even being at the startup for almost 4 years now and stuff, I feel like that slight feeling of not knowing what the hell I'm doing is definitely something that doesn't quite go away. And I'm seeing some nods in the room. So I definitely think you're not the only one. Thank you for your vulnerability. Awesome. So it seems like we have a really lovely group today. I also wanted to just throw in really quick our club member directory. If you wanted to see exactly who works where and kind of get to know some faces and familiarize yourself, you can check that out. You might need to toggle to the EMEA leaders group, which you're currently sitting in and stuff, and you can have that open to the side. But I think we have most of the folks in here. I'll double check and make sure that I'm not missing anybody. And yeah, we can dive right into our subject matter today and talk about part 1 of Radical Candor. You're in the part 1 session. This is our smaller group session for a lot more open discussion with other EMEA leaders. Later on, there's a part 2 session with Kim Scott, which is incredible. So don't be sure to don't miss that on the 26th. So yeah, let's dive in. I backed up to the very front. So you're a manager book club. You signed up for this exclusive club. We got over 200 applicants and could only let in 100 leaders. So you are part of a hand-picked group of EMEA leaders from all sorts of different folks. Today we have folks from Verif, we have folks from Tesco Bank, GiftGaff, Involve Me. So there's some really awesome names in this chat alone that we're super excited to kind of introduce you to and have you talk to as well. Getting into this, we're going to be talking about part 1. I believe if you're looking at the second edition, that's up to page 110. And don't worry if you didn't quite read through or didn't make it. We know you're busy leaders, so we're going to kind of give you little reminders or at least talk about the highest level concepts. And most of this will be focused on like discussion, which is pretty exciting. So I should probably introduce myself. You've gotten to know me for a good 6 minutes without me even saying a word. My name is Yen. I'm co-founder of Kona. We're the manager co-pilot and employee well-being tool for remote teams, and founded this company essentially at UCLA in a dorm room with some friends. And now we're a fully funded VC-backed startup that's really focused on making work a healthier, happier place. I'd love to introduce my co-host, Monica, who is one of the most incredible people I get to work with every day.
Hello, everybody. My name is Monica. I am the first marketer here at Kona. Me and Yen have recently discovered that we have the same degree in English and we're both obsessed with books, and we really wanted to run a book club. So here we are.
Yep. And we certainly didn't expect the first book club to go as hard as it did, but once Kim Scott kind of commented on this post and really kicked it off, the rest was kind of history. So thank you all for participating, and thank you for being patient with a little bit of guinea pigging. This is admittedly our very first book club. So let's dive in. Today, I just wanted to create like a safe container for the discussions. We're going to be talking about radical candor, which does require a level of trust and psychological safety. And I know a lot of you are meeting for the very first time, and so that's a lot to ask. In order to do that, I did want to focus on some discussion rules, which we'll go over in just a sec. So the first one, assume positive intent. We are operating on little 2-inch Zoom screens, so there's a lot missing about body language, background context, etc. When somebody says something, please assume positive intent. I really doubt that anybody here wants to kind of attack or be malicious in any sort of way. So we're going to assume positive intent, and I think that'll take us a really long way. The second thing, at the same time, please create a safe space for others. That might mean not taking up the entire microphone. That also means being respectful of other people's backgrounds and essentially saying that I agree with you or I see you instead of I completely know what you're saying or I completely know where you're coming from, because we don't necessarily always know, but we can definitely empathize and agree. The third thing, acknowledge, validate, and create space for diverse perspectives. That kind of goes to the second point, but we have a lot of folks from really, really different places and that can offer a really rich conversation and discussion of the book. So if we're all good to go there and we can all agree on that, then let's dive into the subject material. Today's agenda is going to be pretty fun. You just saw the intro. The second thing we're going to do is a part 1 review. It should only take about 15 minutes is what we're allotting. The majority of that is these micro discussions. So feel free to unmute. We're going to use the raise hand feature just to avoid some chaos. It can be really hard to turn take and stuff, but we're going to be discussing chapter by chapter kind of key points made in part 1. Then we're going to do a radical candor feedback workshop. We're going to guide you through 2 different scenarios, and you'll be able to chat one-on-one with a different person in this group, offering praise and criticism and kind of practicing what we learned in this first part. The third part is really fun. It's a manager roundtable, and this can actually be your opportunity to get advice and insights from the other expert leaders in this group. So at that point, everything is on the table. You can talk about something that's happened at work. We do ask that you anonymize names and stuff just in case, but talk about what's happening at work, talk about something that you're struggling with, and hopefully another manager who has been through that same thing can help you through that. And finally, we'll walk you through that kind of manager book club hub so you can make sure that you get the most out of the free resources, perks, and things offered from folks in the group and Kim Scott's team as well. So how does that sound so far? I know that was a mouthful. Does that sound good? Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Also, it's super early in the morning, so I really appreciate the thumbs up and heavy engagement that we're getting. Yeah, just really makes it a lot easier. So yeah, let's go through part 1 and dive in. The one-on-one talks being recorded, that's a really good question. It's going to be in breakout rooms, and I'm not exactly sure, but in any case, we're still going to edit the thing because there was a whole 5 minutes before this meeting where Monica and I were panicking chatting. So we'll probably cut that out and just give you the good stuff when we're giving you the recording. So part 1 review. In the very first introduction, Kim Scott actually says this in the book. Part 1 is designed to set your mind at ease. Being a good boss is hard for everyone, no matter how successful they appear on the outside. So please keep that in mind. The intent of part 1 is to basically go through the basics and really go through why management is so difficult and how we can kind of get through that difficulty together. So in the intro, we get this awesome quote: "The impact of my behavior with Bob didn't stop with him. Others on the team wondered why I accepted such poor work." If you have read part 1, then you know the story of Bob. If you don't, we'll get into that story in just a sec and explain why that kind of explains the crux of what radical candor is about and talk about it. So Bob, I doubt he actually looks like this, but this was a funny little graphic that I could find. This was Bob. He was somebody that was really loved in the company and the kind of work culture, super friendly, super charismatic. And Bob also really struggled to give good work. Kim constantly had to ask Bob and remind him about this particular project. It took, I think, a month, if not longer, for him to complete a spreadsheet. And so Bob's work was unsatisfactory. At the same time, we can relate. This anecdote that Kim shares is very, very, it at least resonated with me a lot. I've withheld a lot of feedback in my own experience, and it kind of goes into why feedback is so hard to get right and the stakes of withheld feedback. Does anybody remember exactly what happened with Bob and wants to kind of raise their hand and share from the book?
He got fired, no?
Yeah, he got fired. And how did that conversation go?
He didn't expect this, and he asked why he didn't tell me earlier about that, which was a bit awkward for Kim and for Bob as well.
Exactly. This firing came as a surprise, unfortunately, which is the worst situation both a manager and direct report can be in. And it became because Kim failed to essentially give him feedback in the moment when it was most relevant. So I think that it's really important to talk about this. Let's just take a few moments to describe an experience where maybe you didn't give direct feedback, but you wish you had. Did you have any Bobs in your life, perhaps, that you might have run into? And what do you think kept you from actually giving feedback?
I can go first. So I actually had a very, very similar, eerily similar situation to Bob in the team. And that was someone who's in her first job, and we really didn't, the founder and I, both of us, didn't really want to pressure to like too much. And it ended up being one of those situations where we kept telling each other that it'll get better. We'll just give her like a pep talk and maybe she'll buck up. And she always kept doing this thing of telling us she likes a particular subfield under marketing, but then she would not perform in that field and would perform everywhere else. And so it was very, it was a very, like, it was dissonance for us to hear something and see something else. And I think we just kept hoping it'll get better, and it just never did. And we had to sort of shift her through different departments to see if she's a fit anywhere in the team. This is a startup, so we can take that liberty of shifting people who are in their first jobs, exploring. But it has led to so many awkward conversations throughout the last 6 months, I think, where we had to sort of sit her down and have those very uncomfortable situations separately together. And we just wish we had told her before that we are expecting, X, Y, Z, maybe in quantified terms or something, that we are expecting you to achieve this. But the accountability just never came without us having told.
Yeah, I think a lot of different managers can resonate with your story. Thank you so much for sharing it. And also, to be a manager is to have uncomfortable conversations. I think a lot of folks in this room can agree. Do you think that you could have given feedback earlier? What do you think was preventing you from giving that feedback?
I think we were trying to be polite about the feedback, and I think it was a very human reaction of trying to dodge a super uncomfortable conversation. And so we were trying to sugarcoat the feedback, which I think Kim has pointed out in the book later on. And we were just trying to do this thing of, oh, let's just be kind. And we were not realizing that us being kind was actually not good for someone who's starting out in a career, and who does not know the definition of, what's right, what's wrong, what's enough for her to say that she's performing well enough in her role, and things like that. I think we were both really trying to dodge that conversation. And then later on, we realized that it's not going to work. So someone has to sit down. I still remember this one day. I just had like I was teetering on either I'm going to have a breakdown or a breakthrough. And I just walked that fine line of saying, you know what, I'm having a conversation with her today. The founder was on a leave, and I was just like, I have to take reins in my hand because we have a project that's launching next week and she's not doing anything. And I just had a chat with her, and I sat her down. I'm like, if you don't perform and if you don't deliver, we are going to have to rethink how this works moving forward. That was the hardest part and the breaking point. I think it was the inflection point there.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. That definitely makes sense. And I think being able to sit down and say, I'm actually going to be kind and not just nice is really difficult. Thank you for sharing. And I think we'll get to the next chapter now. So chapter 1, when we actually go into it, Kim shares this: we undervalue the emotional labor of being the boss. This emotional labor is not just part of the job, it's key to being a good boss. And this is where we get the anecdote. You're not just some emotional therapist. Being a therapist is essentially your job as a manager. So when we go into this section, Kim outlines 3 things managers are responsible for. Number 1, results, motivating your team to achieve a goal. Number 2, guidance, growing teammates and assuring that they achieve their career dreams. And number 3, team building, building safe cultures that can withhold feedback, withstand feedback, and openly challenge each other to grow. We also get that first two segments, care personally and challenge directly. That's kind of the key kind of framework for Kim's radical candor quadrants. And so I really want to talk about care personally. And if we can get a different person to kind of share an anecdote, how do you care personally at work? What are some examples and what does that mean to you essentially?
Can I say something? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, you can go. No, you can go.
Lottie first.
Yeah, thank you. I think time. I just, making sure people know that you have time for them, to whatever schedule they want to set. I know when I did that for myself and took the time to understand the people I was around, that was really benefited me. It helped them, give them a better feedback, make the workplace a bit better. So yeah, time.
Fantastic answer. And then next, Aline.
I would say also learn how to listen to people and really listen to them. And I think it's really important, because if someone in your team feels like they're not being listened to, they're not being heard, they feel quite frustrating. And I think this is a way to care personally, is just listen to this person and understand the problem, the frustration, and trying to figure out how can you help them. Yeah.
Yeah. And last but not least, Vicky.
To me is being curious about where the other person is standing, and making a bit of space as well for what they bring from their personal lives, because it affects so much how we behave, perform at work. And I find that many times people don't make space for that, or they say, oh no, these things should be separate, and you can't. So I think that is part of caring personally as well.
Definitely. And I think what you just said, you can't necessarily keep certain things separate. I think there's this illusion that we can keep work and life perfectly separate, that you can somehow leave work at the door. But if that door is your kitchen, or if that door is essentially your front door of your house, now that we all predominantly work remotely or hybridly, that conversation has definitely been complicated. So thank you so much, all of you, for sharing. Chapter 2, and you'll notice that we're blazing through these different things. And so if you do have additional questions, we can save it for the manager roundtable to also discuss certain things as well. So chapter 2, I can see I'm going to have to be really, really direct to get through to you. You are one of the smartest people I know, but saying so much makes you sound stupid. That was that classic quote from Kim's boss, who was giving her feedback after a key presentation that she gave about Google's revenue. That piece, I think this kind of quote right here captures perfectly phrased feedback. And we'll go into that in just a sec. So as you know, and as you've recognized after reading Radical Candor, there are 4 different quadrants: ruinous empathy, manipulative insincerity, obnoxious aggression, and radical candor. There are some examples here, but I'd love to just kind of pass around and just really quickly have somebody define each of these. So ruinous empathy, who can define ruinous empathy for me? Lottie, I saw you unmute. And then Hannah, I'm gonna have you, keep your hands raised and stuff. I'll have you define the next ones. So Lottie, could you define ruinous empathy for us?
I think it's when you say sorry, sorry, but you do this, or sorry about that. I can't define it better now. I've just gone out of my head.
It's completely fine. And I know it's been a long work day. Ruinous empathy being when we're trying to be too nice, as that kind of anecdote we heard earlier, trying to be kind instead of actually giving them real, honest feedback of how they're showing up. Hannah, would you mind, also, I'm sorry, by the way, if I'm mispronouncing names, would you mind defining for us manipulative insincerity?
Well, for that, it's more about, I would say, like ego, like about my own feeling, like worry about if I say that it embarrass me, for example, like how I feel, and that's why I better, just shut up and don't say anything. And it has nothing to do with, caring anybody or challenging anybody. It's more like, okay, well, how do I feel? And that's how I would define that.
Yeah, how I feel, how I'm going to look in front of others, perhaps. That kind of self-ego is definitely what drives manipulative insincerity. And then obnoxious aggression. Can we get one definition for obnoxious aggression?
I think it's when you don't take the human into account.
Definitely. Yeah, the classic Steve Jobs, you're stupid or your work is stupid, which is so harsh, but definitely we've seen some, or perhaps we've had some bosses that tilt into that obnoxious aggression kind of phase. So as we start to talk about these different things, I think it's super important to address it's very hard to get radical candor right. And oftentimes we kind of fall accidentally into a different quadrant. That's completely normal. And the fact that we have awareness over it is, I think, the first step. But if you were to kind of tag yourself or to name a certain quadrant that you typically hang around in and stuff, where do you typically fall? And we'll get maybe 2 or 3 answers just for sake of time. But yeah, anybody brave to raise? Yeah,
I would
please.
say I'm a little bit more about Runa's and empathy. I struggle to say when someone is doing something wrong or they should improve, because I want to look nice, or I want not they like me, but I don't know. I'm still struggling with this. So yeah, definitely. It's something I'm working on.
Yeah, Eva, I saw you raise your hand as well. And
Yeah,
also,
actually,
sorry, we'll raise our hands and stuff just to avoid kind of the confusion there. Thank you so much. Yeah, Eva.
yeah, actually, for me, it's the same. I usually struggle with not hurting anyone for the short term, or you assume that this kind of criticism would have an impact, but it's more about of hurting others than to be liked by all. But yeah, I'm the same. Usually I struggle with that.
Definitely. And last but not least, Francesca.
I think I kind of swing between Runa's empathy and obnoxious aggression depending on who I'm speaking to. So if I kind of perceive them as being very sensitive or something, I might be ruinously empathetic. But if they're not, then I could be kind of that brutal honesty of that, every time you say you sound really stupid. So just kind of checking myself with that brutal honesty. That's definitely feedback I've received. So
Definitely.
Yeah.
And we've run these different workshops. It is we often see less people kind of identifying with manipulative insincerity, which is very interesting and something I'd love to call out. But just note that sometimes this sneaks up on us. The manipulative insincerity of kind of, oh, that was actually informed by ego. That was actually informed by what I needed rather than what that person needed, kind of comes up sometimes. So thank you all for sharing and for actively participating. Finally, we'll go into kind of that third quadrant there, chapter 3. And also for sake of time and pacing and stuff, I might speed through. And so we might skip the question for chapter 3 and go into chapter 4. Apologies ahead of time. For too many bosses, recognition means promotion, but in most cases, this is a big mistake. The key to recognize their contribution in other ways. So essentially, the kind of concept of rock stars versus superstars is discussed in this chapter, as well as this excellent framework for understanding performance. Essentially going into kind of high growth, stability, low performance, and that kind of tricky middle area. We talk about superstars and rock stars in this chapter. Stephanie, somebody who is jumping up the career ladder as fast as she can climb it. She's going from entry-level CX to manager, and she really is hungry for new challenges and ideas. And the rock star Isabel, who is probably the best backend engineer we have. She doesn't necessarily want the crazy kind of career ladder climb. She really wants to excel in her craft and be an expert in her field. Kim talks in depth about how to manage these different types and also kind of goes into the struggles. Originally, I wanted to talk about kind of not challenging our rock stars or superstars enough, but I think for sake of time, we might have to skip this question. So if you kind of have some ideas around this or something that you've been struggling with, particularly about performance, we'll save that for that manager roundtable. That's quite valuable at the very end. And last but not least, chapter 4, I didn't say Steve is always right. I said he gets it right. Like anyone, he is wrong sometimes, but he insists, and not gently either, that people tell him when he's wrong. And of course, the Steve in this quote is Steve Jobs, being described by one of his coworkers. This is where we kind of learn about the overall get it done wheel, get stuff done wheel. Kim is going through all the different kind of sections, and this I felt like was a very meaty chapter to talk about how to actively collaborate, how to actively get more from your team, and particularly go through that kind of rock tumbler. I did want to take a quick pause to talk about parts of the get stuff done wheel. So were there any parts of this wheel in particular that were easier for you, parts that you tend to skip? We probably have time for 2 answers here. Anybody want to volunteer?
I feel like listening is relatively easy, you know, like you just give the space and you create, you know, but rather making the decision, that part gets more tricky, but that's just my personal experience as such. I don't know about the others. I would be curious to know.
Yeah, Lottie, I saw that hand.
The hand thing, learning. I can get so caught up in the rest of the wheel that I forget to go, did that go all right? Did I do okay? Did we do okay? Yeah.
Definitely. I definitely get snagged on the learning bit, especially as I'm like so heads down trying to accomplish a million different things, which I'm sure a lot of us can relate to. So fantastic. And I know we completely sprinted through, but that's basically to give us some time to do the actual proper Radical Candor workshop. I did want to kind of point out from that previous section, a lot of Kim's book talks a lot more than just what you saw with those 4 quadrants. We go into performance management, we go into getting stuff done and making decisions. So I definitely don't want to de-emphasize how important those aspects of the book are. And again, that kind of last section of this workshop today is going to be for discussions of that as well. But we're going to get into the meat and bones of it, the Radical Candor aspect of it. We're going to pair each of you into one-on-one groups. Got a confirmation from Monica. Those are not recorded, so those are safe spaces for you to actually practice and mess up. Messing up, by the way, is part of it, so please don't feel the need to over-apologize. We're all learning here. We're all learners and teachers. But essentially, we're going to go through Radical Candor and basically try to get into that topmost section. Some examples, by the way, that Kim is actively giving. With praise, give examples, be specific, and make sure that it is meaningful to that individual. You're going to pretend that you know this person much better than you do, and you're going to pretend to be in completely different roles. I'll be assigning kind of roles in just a second, but make it up, be an improv actor, kind of make it up on the fly, but really embody what you might do as a manager or as a receiver in that moment and take turns switching off. In addition, you're also going to offer criticism. When offering criticism, again, be specific. You can try the compliment sandwich as kind of an entry-level way to get into it, but really try to be direct. Clear is kind when it comes to giving criticism. And so we'll get that going. So scenario 1 is going to be praise. This is an easy place to start. You're going to be having a situation where a junior teammate took the initiative to fix a broken process. That specific process, let's just say, is a sales process, though you can kind of choose a different department if you feel like you have no idea what sales is up to. So we're going to have person A be the manager and person B, a person who had created a system for compiling learnings. The manager has 6 direct reports that work in sales, for example, and we'll just start with that scenario first. So Monica is going to kick us out to a bunch of different breakout rooms. And in a second, you're going to have 10 minutes each. So 10 minutes for this scenario and 10 minutes for the next to basically do this. And yeah, screenshot this slide, write it on a little post-it note. A, manager of a sales team. B, the person who came up with a great process for compiling learnings. And yeah, let's try to do a little workshop about that. You'll have 10 minutes, give or take. It might be a little bit less, and you'll actively see yourself getting kicked out of that breakout room, and you'll come back right to this meeting room and stuff if you're unfamiliar with the process. So awesome. And yeah, we'll give Monica a second. Hello.
Hi.
How did that go? Was it thumbs up, thumbs down, middle? Yeah.
It was nice.
Yeah. Yay. I'm so glad. We tried to keep you in the same group, so at least you're like, oh, okay, I don't need to re-meet a stranger. Yay. Okay. Thumbs, was it good? Mid?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, I'm getting a lot more things. Alina, did we ever figure out what happened with your mic and stuff? Is it still wonky? I'll take that as a yes still. I'm sorry to hear. So anyway, we're going to dive into the Open Manager Roundtable. This is your time to get advice from other folks in the group, share what's actually been going on, and maybe take radical candor a little bit away from theory and into practicality. Given sake of time, we're going to give about 10 minutes instead of the full 15. Really apologize, but we can always technically meet again if you guys are interested, and I'll kind of pull folks at the very end. So yeah, again, remember discussion rules, and yeah, let's just dive in. If somebody wants to raise their hand, they can kind of offer the very first thing. And if somebody else wants to raise their hand, we're going to assume that that's an answer. Yeah, we'll try to go with that first. Lottie, thank you for raising your hand.
Okay, so I'm assuming I can explain a situation that I'm having trouble with at work, and I haven't done anything about it yet, although I should have. So I'm new to this job, and there's someone that line manages me, and I have come to this job with lots of ideas and things that I want to improve and examples of stuff that I want to improve. But every time I bring these things up, that person keeps saying, oh yeah, we've done that. Oh yeah, we've done that, but we did that a while ago and it didn't work. What it makes me feel is diminished. Like, oh, I had a good idea. And I guess, is this not a good idea now? And I almost brought them up on it. I almost said, hey, can I just give you some feedback? But I couldn't because I felt new, and that's my line manager. It just felt super awkward. So yeah, what do you guys think?
Thank you so much for sharing.
Tell this person how you feel, and from your perspective, how you're feeling. That's what I would say. But yeah.
It's a good shout.
Really, really hard situation. Vicky, did you have a question or an answer?
I feel you. I have a similar situation with my boss, and what I try to, usually what comes up is a bit of defensiveness, like, yeah, no, like we tried that, and I try to dive into, but could we try again? Or what's the risk in trying again? Or what triggers your alarms, to try to get past the wall of no or defensiveness. And it actually worked in getting these defenses down. And then my boss is like, yeah, well, okay, yeah, maybe it could work. But if you look after such and such aspect, for example. So when he understands where I come from or what I try to achieve, then things get a bit more relaxed.
Thank you.
Sorry, I muted myself. Go ahead, Aniko.
Thanks. I feel you so much. My CEO is 24/7 like that. But what I really realized is that it's lots of times people come with new ideas, so there is a natural time of rather listening and then coming up with the ideas when you are not so new anymore. But up until then, I always try to tap into her a little bit, not ego, but like say, would you mind sharing that experience, or how did that situation ended, to see if your reality today is the same, or can you point out, yes, but this is why it could end differently. So stepping into, beyond the defensiveness and just lean on, well, you're my superior, so please share that knowledge, could be helpful. And if it doesn't work, then I would, yes, go for a private feedback session if you see it's a pattern, and if it's more than you two and more than the given situation.
That's a really good point. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Does anybody else have something they want to bring up? Go ahead, Eva.
Actually, we had it as well very recently, and it was almost for a year, when it wasn't only like our bosses and line managers, or it was some kind of cultural thing for a while, and we had a new management that was after startup years at the company. So actually all the ideas that they were coming to people at the company, that was the reaction of the people that started to work from the scratch. And the people had the feeling, or I felt that it wasn't about the task itself. Maybe it was some kind of emotion behind, and the feeling behind that they felt like someone doesn't appreciate what they did in the past and it's not good enough. So actually we found out that the culture got so depressed or frustrated by this new approach, that's what was the feeling of the people, that we do ask about the things they did in the past, but they felt like we ask them in the bad way, or that we don't trust those activities, or we don't trust those decisions. And it was always when someone new came with something that, hey, let's try this, and everybody was like, oh, but we did it, it never worked. Yeah, don't come with this because we already tried everything. And actually we had to really rethink the approach that the management, that we as management had towards the people, because they started to take it personally actually. And I had the same for very limited time. I must admit that I had the same feeling towards my boss. He was a new boss. The management changed, and all the things that he did ask and he proposed, I was like, we did that already. You know, this was the analyze. So we discussed the analyze and the topic, and I could understand now that he could feel as you. Right? I would say it was my ego a bit, but we had to go through the analyze to see that it didn't work out, or that maybe it's time to refresh the analyze and to look into the topic as well. So maybe if you would approach your boss with that in mind, that he might feel something behind, or not from you, but there is his emotional part, and maybe look into the practical analyze of the task, and ask him, hey, maybe I should look at it differently. So you do your analysis and you compare it with that, and you see a new insight. That's what we did, and it started to work actually with my new boss. So we did our 2 analyses and we compared, and we said, yeah, let's do it again. Yeah, I did talk too long. Sorry, guys.
I think it was a great point and offered a really vulnerable perspective of the other side. So thank you so much for sharing. I saw a hand earlier from Hannah. Did you have a question, by the way, that you wanted to raise?
I actually have a question. When we talk about feedback, we talk about how to give feedback and so on. What if, like the other side is like feedback prone and say, okay, well, I actually don't want feedback, but that's basically what I heard now. Like, okay, well, you know what, we have done it that way. It's kind of like, okay, well, go away. I don't really want to hear it. How do we handle someone who said, I actually don't appreciate getting feedback? It's not like everybody wants feedback, right? It's scary.
Really, really great point. Does anybody have any ideas? Vicky?
To me, I think a fair point that Kim presents in the book is to ask for feedback first, to exercise that receiving feedback first and stating why you're asking for feedback. So you're kind of leading by example, being vulnerable first, especially with these people. And then, after a few times, then it's not so maybe such a power dynamic that you are giving feedback to your direct report. And then saying again, why? The reason I give you feedback is because things could be improved, things should be improved, or we need to improve some metric, I don't know. But I think one needs to change that power dynamic by, being the one receiving criticism, especially. first.
Jens?
Yeah, I agree with that, but also and also to make sure that you give feedback, even not necessarily just when it's criticism. Like, try to implement it as early as possible, so that it's not when it comes to that you have to criticize somebody, they're already familiar with the feedback loop or the way that you give feedback at your company. Because it's like the example in the first chapter of the book, which is like the Bob person is surprised when they're fired because they haven't received any negative feedback. It's the same for criticism. I believe that they have, if you like, if people are ready for the criticism because they received honest feedback in other ways before, I think it's easier. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm going to have to cut Manager Roundtable short a little bit. Those 10 minutes kind of went by super, super fast, and hopefully everything has been valuable. I know it's been pretty quick, and really appreciate everybody's patience and flexibility through this. The last thing I want to do is just walk you through some free resources that you've received by being part of this exclusive book club, and make sure everybody's aware of those resources. So has everybody been able to access the Manager Book Club Hub? We've designed that specifically for you. I'm getting some head nods and stuff. If you have no idea what we're talking about, don't worry, we're going to get through that in just a second. So let me dive over to here and walk you through. Can you see this screen all right? Fantastic. So this is our Manager Book Club Hub. It has all the information you're going to need as part of this really awesome exclusive group. As you know, you're in the part 1 discussion. Make sure you check your calendar for that part 2 discussion on April 26th. I did want to call out a few sections here. All the details of the live sessions are included here. If you haven't somehow bought the book, but you were talking about the book, I'm guessing you won't need the section here. Club member directory, a fantastic place to kind of see EMEA leaders and also take a peek at who's in the kind of other leadership groups. There's some really, really awesome, impressive folks that have been admitted into this book club, which is fantastic, as well as everybody's LinkedIns. If you want to just kind of click the link, you can definitely jump in right there. The other kind of thing I'd love to call out, event recordings, all event recordings, sans the kind of one-on-ones and kind of chopped up neatly, will be available here. So that's kind of going to be where we put stuff specifically. That part 2 event, we'll make sure that the part 1 event is essentially that we get consent of everybody that's shared and stuff, that you're okay with being incorporated and included. So we'll make sure that that happens. Other things, if you want to ask Kim Scott a question on the April 26th event, please submit your question right here. That's going to be pretty important. If you are selected, you get to unmute and literally talk to Kim Scott, which is fantastic. So do take that opportunity. This is your golden opportunity to talk to the author. And finally, last but not least, we have member discounts. If you haven't already, Kim Scott's team has given you this free video book by Lit Video Books. Just literally go through and just get the free book. I think it's worth $30. And so it's a really great freebie. You can go through all the things, give your account maybe to your teammates. We unfortunately only have 200 free codes, so please don't let all 200 of your teammates apply, because then it leaves less for book club. And also you get 15% off Kona. We have feedback features for essentially supporting emotional well-being at work. And so you can also check that out if you're interested. Thank you so much for taking part of book club. It's been an absolute joy to have you. Check your email for the kind of next event aspects, and also for a little feedback survey. We really want to understand how you enjoyed the session, what we can improve, etc. You can also email me at yen@heykona.com. I'm just going to throw my email in as well, or at least share my screen. But yeah, thank you so much for attending, and hopefully it was valuable for you. And yay. Yeah, please don't be a stranger. Email me. You've already gotten a million emails from me and stuff, and let me know what you thought. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you at part 2.